From the CBS Bay Area studios, this is KPIX 5 News.
Breaking news, evacuations expand overnight. This new video this morning captures the Kincaid Fire tearing through Sonoma County.
The question this morning, is the fire getting away from firefighters? We have a team of reporters on scene right now. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Emily Turner.
And I'm Devin Fehely. The fire activity in Sonoma County developed rapidly overnight. Let's get right to the evacuation zones. Parts of northern Santa Rosa are now under mandatory evacuation orders. Officials also announced new mandatory evacuations in Sebastopol, Bloomfield, Valley Forge. People in Hillsburg, Windsor, Grayton, Guerneville, Jenner, and Bodega Bay were told to get out last night. The fast-moving Kincaid Fire has forced even more evacuations in Sonoma County. Officials have given holdouts the hard out. Let's go live to KPIX 5's Wilson Walker with the latest there. Wilson, good morning.
Good morning, Devin. We are here on sort of the side of the valley. If you go out past the eastern edge of Healdsburg, you get the sort of rural interface where the valley hits the ridge, and that is where the fire descended and hit these properties. Now we're trying to figure out what this might have been. There's obviously some lumber stored here, and you can see the vehicles that's there. This clearly would have been a difficult place to defend in the conditions last night. When the winds picked up, they picked up really fast. Well, it happens, and just as soon as that fire picked up and ran down that hill into this valley, I looked back behind me, and there was a spot fire burning sort of in an area kind of, as Katie mentioned, the vineyards themselves make for great little breaks in these fires. They do not really burn, and so if you're looking for a safe place to be or a break from a lot of tremendous fuel, the vineyards are always kind of a nice place to be. So they did make for little buffers in little areas along the highway, but then you have spots where there are clearly, these old dry trees and the sort of low underbrush areas, and those go up immediately fast. So yeah, you're right. There's not a line. It's a bunch of people stationed all over the place to put down fires where they need to, because you can't put it out everywhere. You just want to put it out where I'm standing so this house doesn't burn down. That's the trick.
All right, stay safe out there, Wilson Walker. Thank you so much. Now let's go back to Katie Nielsen, who is off of Highway 128.
Yeah, she's at the Soda Rock Winery in Sonoma County. Katie, I've got a question for you. It's my understanding that winery was built around an historic building that was about 150 years old, that they added some other buildings to that, but you're saying all of that appears to be gone.
It does. So we actually saw the face of what appeared to be a stone building, and it said, I believe, established 1869. And everyone just watched helplessly as it burned to the ground. Now, what you're seeing behind me is actually one of the outbuildings that burned. And the winery, for the most part, is a loss. If we look over to the left, you can see there is one building that is still standing that says Soda Rock, and even further to the left we can see an engine that is there trying to protect that structure from the flying embers, anything that might land nearby, land on the roof, anything like that. But as we turn back and look back toward the right, you can see what is left of the winery, and that is not much. So there's a big metal sculpture in the front that is still there, but behind it, all the rest of the buildings are burning. And unfortunately, this is what we are seeing in various spots along Highway 128. We're not far from Jimtown, just a little bit south of Jimtown, but not quite to Chalk Hill Road. And what firefighters are telling us this morning is that they are hoping everyone has evacuated because of these winds, as we've been talking about all morning. We have been experiencing gusts here that are sending showers of embers all across the road, all across the property. You can see the winds in the trees. Everything is moving around, blowing those embers and debris. And that is what is spreading this fire so quickly. It is also what is making this so incredibly dangerous. So we keep talking about it, but it is so important for people to heed those evacuation warnings. Now, the sun is starting to come up, and normally this would be a time when we would start talking about the fact that CAL FIRE could get resources in the air. But when the winds are blowing this strong, Water-dropping helicopters can't fly. The air tankers can't either, because if they tried to lay down a line of retardant, one, it would be too dangerous, and two, it would just go everywhere. It would not be effective. And so as we were talking with Captain Foxworthy earlier this morning from CAL FIRE, he told us, right now, we cannot firefight in these types of winds. We cannot focus on putting this fire out. The number one priority is life and safety, and that is why they had the evacuation orders for Healdsburg and Windsor so early yesterday. They made sure everyone was out by 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon so that they could actually get in here and not have to worry about life and safety, and instead could actually focus on trying to protect the structures. Unfortunately, Soda Rock Winery is almost a total loss, but they have been able, in other cases that we've seen, to put fires out that are burning right next to a house, right next to a barn, right next to some type of an outbuilding. And this area in the heart of wine country in Alexander Valley is where the fire is most active, unfortunately. The fire is mainly burning in the hills, as Wilson was talking about, and as we discussed a little bit earlier this morning, the wineries are creating fire breaks, and that's because there simply is not a lot of fuel in the wineries. The ground typically very clear. The vines themselves have a higher moisture content than the dried grasses, so they don't really burn. But what we are seeing is that this fire is snaking its way through creek beds, through the hills, and then what's happening is the embers are flying out, and that is what is catching these structures on fire. And so again, this is why it is so incredibly important when you do get the evacuation warning to leave, so that firefighters can come in and do their best to protect the structures. So the thing that is going to be the most critical this morning that firefighters are worrying about is the weather, because that is going to determine when they are able to get those aerial resources up. Now, they can fly spotter planes in these types of winds, but again, no water-dropping helicopters, no tankers dropping retardant until these winds start calming down a little bit more. So these firefighting efforts are not to put the fire out, but instead protect structures. So we're here on Highway 128. The fire has crossed over to the west side of 128. There are a number of intense firefights going on right now off of Chalk Hill Road. We do know that some structures there have been destroyed. That's kind of a cut over in between 128 and the communities of Healdsburg and Windsor. And so right now, firefighters again saying, heed those evacuation warnings, let us come in and do our jobs. And for anyone who is thinking about staying and trying to protect their own home, this is not the time to do that. These are historic winds, historic fires. We're seeing that here because we are literally surrounded by fire right now. Every direction we look, we can see a fire burning, and that's because of all the spot fires that are going on right now. We did just get an update from CAL FIRE. The Kincaid Fire now officially at 30,000 acres, 10% contained, and we will get a press conference from CAL FIRE around 10 o'clock this morning with more updated information. So for now, I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Katie Nielsen on the fire lines. Thank you. Let's go ahead and get a check of our weather conditions with Emily in the Weather Center.
Yeah, I mean, really, the story today is all about the winds. I cannot stress enough. In fact, you've heard both Wilson and Katie talk about it. Not only what it's doing to this fire, but also kind of the challenge it's presenting rather to firefighters, not only in the ground, but in the air, in which they are not. You're taking a live look out towards the Golden Gate Bridge right now, and you can see this camera shaking around a bit. That's because it is so windy. Even in San Francisco right now, we're seeing pretty significant winds. Our current temperatures really solidly in the 50s, but as far as this fire is concerned, the temperatures aren't what's going to be a big part of that. It is the wind speeds. Now, currently, we are calm right around the bay, but zooming up further to the north, you can see those numbers pop into the double digits. Napa, 28. Fairfield currently speeds 45 miles an hour. Santa Rosa, 23. It is even more than that at those peaks, especially in those gusty areas. All right, looking at our future cast specifically for the North Bay. The fire is burning just up here outside of Healdsburg. In fact, it's come just over 128, and part of Santa Rosa has been evacuated. So let's look. This is this morning by 10 a.m. Purple is bad. That's the one where we're seeing these significant gusts. In the peaks, we're seeing those gust speeds up to 80 miles an hour. Down the valley floor where firefighters are in some spots, we're still seeing sustained winds of 30 to 45 miles an hour. You saw a live picture with Wilson blowing those embers anywhere from 200 feet ahead of them, causing spot fires. So watch the colors as we progress into the day, because there is no relief, at least not for a significant amount of time. Even by 8 o'clock tonight, we're still seeing double-digit gusts. Healdsburg, it looks like it has a little bit of a break in some regards, but for the most part, it is still going to be blowing even into the afternoon, evening hours. It will not lay down and calm down until into Monday. By 6 o'clock in the Monday morning commute will still be really, really windy, 32 miles an hour in Calistoga. And then eventually that wind advisory runs out at 11 o'clock. You see those winds kind of start to retreat, but basically they are dying down. They are all coming off the Sierra, so from the northeast, bringing with it cooler air. This is a cold front, so that's why our temperatures aren't really playing a role. But because they're coming off the mountains, they are dry and they are very, very fast coming in this direction, which explains why those evacuations are in the areas they are. So at this point, it's burning just kind of northeast of Healdsburg, the initial evacuations, because yesterday those winds were more coming towards the west. They evacuated pretty much all the way from here to the Pacific. At this point, now the most recent evacuation includes the northwest corner of Santa Rosa. So really a huge swath all the way, including Sebastopol, which shows you the direction these firefighters think that fire may go. At this point, the same direction as the winds, which is pretty much from your screen down and to the left, making its way towards the Pacific, which is the direction those wind gusts are going. Now, we will eventually begin to calm down before moving into the middle of next week, where there is another wind event that we're not even going to talk about because we got to get through this one. So this is another version of the Futurecast that really demonstrates the colors. Again, watch the purple. We were in the numbers in the 40s up there. By midday, again, we are still very, very, very windy, and that is not just for the North Bay. Now, the North Bay sees the brunt of it, but we are seeing really heavy winds all the way in Fairfield. In fact, there is another fire that has popped up in Contra Costa County we're going to keep an eye on, and the winds are affecting that. But in the meantime, because of that large evacuation area, traffic is really being impacted. There have been closures on and off throughout the night. This is the overall big picture of Highway 101. Pretty much Santa Rosa North has been evacuated. And you can see, because 101 looks pretty good as far as your drive speeds are concerned. It is south of Santa Rosa all the way into Petaluma, where you're at speeds of 15 miles an hour or less in some places as a result of tens of thousands of people being told to get out. Let's start with the initial evacuation zone. Okay, 128 is this right here where it's purple. That's where the fire has jumped and is continuing to head, for the most part, south. Katie Nielsen is along this road where you saw her at Soda Rock Winery. Now, these roads are closed. These folks were out at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. These are the new evacuations, and this is very, very slow as you are headed out of 101 and headed southbound, which is the direction that officials have been telling folks to go when they leave.
And we have a quick update on that fire that's burning in Oakley. Firefighters now say they have a handle on it. That is the good news. It broke out near Bethel Island and Cypress Roads. There is no word yet on any damage.
Well, we will have much more on those fires burning in Sonoma County. Of course, we will break into coverage